Are you inconsistent with your aim? Do you feel like enemies always have some kind of an advantage? Have you ever died in Valorant and you were like, bro, there is no way I can react on that? Well, what if I told you that your aim is not a problem and that you don't understand how to use proper movement and positioning into your own advantage? What's up, tricksters? My name is Charlatan. I'm the all-time Radiant player from closed beta and professional Valorant coach that successfully improved thousands of players in the last 2 years. And I'm here to improve you as well. In this guide, I'm going to explain some movement and positioning techniques that you can use to gain advantage in Valorant and have easier time taking more kills. But also, these techniques are going to improve your aim tremendously and you'll become a harder target to hit. Let's start by saying that proper strafing movement is the #1 thing that you need to learn in Valorant. You need to stop driving around corners like an Uber with W key. Every time when you peek enemies like this, you're extremely easy target. Your crosshair placement is not ready for a fight, and enemies can kill you from multiple different directions which you didn't properly clear. Anytime when you peek an angle, you should primarily be strafing, using A and D movement. You will move the fastest if you're moving parallel compared to your enemies without the W key. So what you essentially want to learn is to do many small peeks, clearing one angle at a time, with proper crosshair placement and making sure to clear every angle with anticipation that enemies can already be there. Move in, move out. Move in, you see the enemy, stop and shoot. And this strafing mechanic you should also implement in your gunfights. When you're holding some common positions for which enemies can have a really good crosshair placement, or if angle perception advantage is not working in your favor when you're holding close angles. Start strafing, baby. Needless to say, while you're approaching some angle or moving through some corridor, your crosshair placement should always be close to an angle from which enemies can peek you at that moment of time. But as soon as you're approaching some corner, you need to clear angles with some peeking or strafing mechanic and pre-place your crosshair inside of the wall to anticipate enemies on that specific location. Also, I need to emphasize that counter-strafing mechanic in Valorant doesn't exist, and is just a bad habit of some pro players from CSGO. In Valorant, you will stop immediately as you release your movement keys. There is no need to counter anything, you're just wasting your time. When you're performing strafing type of movement, going left and right, the only thing that you need to learn is consecutively tapping and releasing your A and D keys. It's that simple. One very important rule to remember in Valorant: player that is moving is always in some kind of an advantage over the player that is standing still, and we call this phenomenon in FPS games the peeker's advantage. You probably had hundreds of situations where you were holding some kind of an angle, enemies peeked you extremely fast and they killed you while they were completely running on your screen, but that's not what actually happened. On your screen the enemy was moving, but on his screen he actually stopped for a few milliseconds in order to regain accuracy, shoot and kill you. Valorant servers sometimes don't render the accurate position of players that are moving, while the position of a player that is standing still, well, it's always 100% accurate because you're not moving at all. That doesn't mean that you cannot hold angles at all, you just need to understand how to hold them properly, which I'm going to explain in my future in-depth angle holding guide when this video reaches 2,000 likes. So if you don't want to miss any important videos for your improvement in the future, I highly recommend you to hit the subscribe button and turn your notifications on, baby. But why does this diabolical peeker's advantage exist? To make it as simple as possible, Valorant servers are utter shit, and they have a lot of problems with input lag, desync, and inconsistent tick rates. Even though enemy appeared on one specific location, his real position can be a few steps forward or backwards because of Valorant server's inconsistency. Then what can we do to counter this stupid advantage? If you're holding some kind of a common position or enemies revealed you and they can easily pre-fire you with good crosshair placement, we always want to hold that angle with strafing type of movement to make her body change its location consistently. And when enemies peek you, you want to stop and shoot with 100% accuracy. The best thing to do in situations where enemies can clear you with peeker's advantage and proper crosshair placement is to counter their movement with yours and eliminate that advantage when you hear or anticipate the enemies. In that situation, mechanical skill and reaction time will determine a winner of that gunfight. If you're holding some kind of an off angle, narrow angle, position where you can surprise enemies, or you're playing operator, you don't need to move at all, because in that situation we're using surprise mechanic to throw off enemies' crosshair placement, or we are playing a powerful one-tap elo stick. One huge misconception is that high ping gives you some kind of a better peeker's advantage, but the real problem is the ping difference between two players. High ping players have absolutely zero advantage compared to low ping. They're even in a huge disadvantage. It's same as if you're playing on a PC with 60 FPS, 60 refresh rate and high input lag. On high ping, you cannot perform slow peeks. Escaping gunfights is much harder. Holding angles while standing still is impossible, and the only thing that you can do is abuse that ping difference to enhance peeker's advantage and be aggressive 24/7 on both attackers and defender's side. In Valorant, regardless of who has a high or low ping, if the ping difference between two players is only around 10 or above, the peeker's advantage becomes more noticeable. So it's not the ping that's killing you. You're holding angles like a monkey and you don't have balls nor a good crosshair placement to engage enemies. While high ping players, they're forced to move a lot more than players with a normal ping. Let's say the player A has 100 ping and he is doing a fast peek onto the player B with 50 ping that is standing still. Player A has a huge peeker's advantage, which means that he will notice player B much faster, while on the screen of player B, enemy won't be rendered in real time. But if the roles were reversed, player B would have the same advantage over the player A. The higher the ping difference is, the bigger peeker's advantage becomes, and it's hard to hold common angles while standing still. If you lived in a perfect world where everyone has the same ping, this advantage problem would be less noticeable, but ping difference is just making it even worse. Optimal ping for Valorant is between 5 and 60. And the best ping for Valorant is around 80 because you can abuse a bit of higher peeker's advantage, while holding angles isn't that much of a problem. That is why some players use VPN to boost their ping to that level. But that also means that you have the higher peeker's advantage over those players. So be more aggressive and don't be a pussy. Another rule that you need to understand to properly engage enemies is player that is standing further away from the wall has angle perception advantage over the player that is closer to that specific wall. An example of this would be if you peek enemies on B site while shifting from the mid window right here, they can already see your body and shoulder right at this moment of your peek, and you have absolutely zero visuals over the enemies on B site. So the winner of gunfights in Valorant will also be decided based on how you move and position yourself in terms of angle perception advantage. Generally speaking, when you're holding angles, you want to move yourself as far away as possible from that specific angle so you can see enemy's body before they see you. And if you're forced to play a bit closer to the angles, then it's always beneficial to strafe a bit or to engage enemies aggressively before they peek you. What about that thing, bunny hopping? Is it worth learning? Bunny hopping doesn't do a jack shit in Valorant. It doesn't make you faster as in CSGO, but there are some benefits of this movement mechanic. All you need to do in order to B-hop is just hold your movement keys, consistently spam jump, and navigate yourself through air with your mouse. I also recommend you to always bind jump to scroll wheel, because it's gonna make your movement smoother and easier. And if you're playing Jet and you wanna glide around, you can keep a spacebar for it, or in my situation I use X. With this mechanic, you can make yourself a harder target to hit when you're repositioning, and you can move through elevated positions a bit faster. This mechanic is also very useful for learning air strafing, which can help you with skill jumps to reach some advantage positions. And the last thing is the silent B-hops. Basically, if you hold shift while bunny hopping through elevated positions, your footsteps are completely silent, and you're moving faster through these slope areas of the maps instead of holding shift and W. Now, how can we use all of these movement and positioning mechanics in our advantage? There are only two ways of engaging enemies in Valorant. First way is with intention to reveal their positions and properly clear angles one by one with shoulder peek, slow peek, and jump spotting techniques. Shoulder peeking is also known as Jiggle Peek, and we use this to clear every angle one by one, cutting the pie. When we're clearing angles in Valorant, we don't want to drive around corners, we want to cut them rough with strafing movement. Essentially, shoulder peek is when you're moving in and out around a specific corner while strafing, and we are placing our crosshair inside of the wall for the angle that we want to clear. So if you want to clear B-long area of bind, we're positioning our crosshair inside of this wall on the first angle that we want to clear, and we are moving fast in and out. If we see the enemy on that position, we can stop and initiate the gunfight. If we don't see the enemy after we move out, we reposition our crosshair for second most common angle which players usually hold, and we clear that position in the same way so we can proceed safely forward. It would be absolutely stupid fast peeking this area of the map without knowing the exact location of enemies, because you won't have proper crosshair placement for all of these angles and enemies will have easier time killing you. When you're performing this peeking technique, you always want to keep yourself as far away as possible from the wall from which you're engaging enemies to reduce angle perception advantage. Because if you peek enemies with this technique closer from the wall right here without knowing their exact locations, during the peek you have a huge peeker's advantage. But if you had a bad crosshair placement or you want to disengage that fight around this corner, you're in a huge angle perception disadvantage. Throughout this whole movement, you're absolutely useless to fight your enemy, while they can still see a huge part of your body exiting that angle. They can penetrate you to the wall, and also only Valorant gods know how server is going to register your body while you're exiting that in and out peek. Maybe your body on the enemy screen will stay a few milliseconds longer than on yours, and you will die even though on your screen you completely hid your body around this wall. But if you clear angles in and out, cutting the pie as far away as possible from the walls, enemies have less angle perception advantage, and it's highly unlikely that you're going to die while performing this type of a movement. The worst thing that you can do in Valorant is clearing angles like this, or trying to reveal enemies with your knife out in this stupid way. Pull yourself from the walls as far away as possible, and you'll have higher chances to survive clearing angles one by one. Slow peek is when you're clearing angles while shifting, so that enemies don't expect you and they don't hear your footsteps. The worst thing that you can do while you're engaging enemies with a slow peek is once again moving around angles like an Uber driver. In Valorant we have something that we call a silent step mechanic that helps us with proper slow peeking. If you press any movement key for a very short period of time, your movement won't be audible at all. When you press fast A and D in order to strafe, that movement won't make any footsteps for you. So if I'm slowly engaging enemies in a window position on bind, I'm pulling myself away from the wall as far away as I can, placing my crosshair inside of the wall where I need to clear my next angle, and I'm doing a fast in and out movement with silent step mechanic while repeating this process for every single angle that I'm engaging. Basically, you need to understand that crosshair placement, angle perception advantage, and peeker's advantage are working in a positive correlation. If you're properly using this relationship, you gain a huge advantage over the enemies to either kill them or successfully reveal their positions. But if you're missing only one piece of this relation, you kinda lose all of your advantage, and the gunfight becomes 50-50, or it'll go in a favor of enemies depending on the map layout. Now, the most important technique to clear angles, which all of you need to implement a lot more in your gameplay, is jump spotting, and you should use it whenever you're engaging enemies in corridors where they can play multiple different horizontal or vertical positions for which you cannot have a good crosshair placement, or you're playing on defender side and you just want to get information about enemies' advance onto the bomb sites. When you're jump spotting in Valorant, you want to be close to the wall, run forward, and then as soon as you think you're going to see the angle that you want to clear, press in the same time jump backward teleports, and some strafing key to move towards safety. Also in Valorant, we have something that is called silent jump spotting. If you're standing below some position where you can hit your head while doing this movement mechanic, you can hold shift and spam jump to spot your enemies and completely remove audio of your footsteps. If you dry peek every angle without any ability or previous information for your crosshair placement, enemies can easily kill you with operator or with some kind of a defender side positioning setup or some kind of a surprise mechanic, and you're consistently putting yourself into 50-50 gunfights. Now that you have the perfect crosshair placement by successfully revealing enemies one angle at a time, or you know their exact positions based on previous rounds, what is the best way to kill those mother effers with the highest possible peeker's advantage? The second way of engaging enemies in Valorant is with intention to kill. And when you're performing these type of movements, there is no going back from gunfights. That is why properly clearing angles and crosshair placement are extremely important. To engage enemies in this way, we use techniques of fast peek and crouch peek. Fast peek, or also known as a fast swing, is when you're sprinting sideways with your A or D keys from the corner and engaging enemies in a fast gunfight. When should you stop with your swing completely depends on you and which enemies you're fighting in that specific game. For an example, high elo players react poorly on wider swings, because they're primarily tapping players with 3 to 5 bullets, and they don't spray that much, so the wide swing will completely throw off their crosshair placement. While on the other hand, low elo players react poorly on close swings because of their really bad crosshair placement and reflexes. Now, crouch peek is basically a fast peek with crouch. You will see a lot of pro and Radiant players spamming crouch 24/7 as they're clearing angles one by one or engaging enemies fast. But Charlatan, isn't crouching a bad thing? Listen here, champ. Crouching is extremely good to throw off enemies' crosshair placement, especially in high elo lobbies. When enemy crouches, you should crouch as well to counter his movement. Crouching is good when you lose control of your spray to reduce the spread of a weapon, or control of your crosshair placement, and for many other movement purposes. The only times when crouching is bad is if there's a chance to engage more than one enemy in a short period of time, when you're holding an angle, or if enemy is strafing, and for all other purposes it's good to use this movement tool. Now, the absolutely best way to perform fast peek or a crouch peek is from the wall that is closer to you, with a perfect crosshair placement. This is also known as a Zentares or Ferrari Peek. Let's say that you revealed enemy jet playing in this B-long area of the map with some kind of a utility or a movement mechanic. You want to move as close as possible to the corner, place your crosshair ready inside of the wall for enemy's location, perform some kind of a fast peek, stop, and kill that scumbag. When you peek enemies from the wall that is closer to you, you're abusing peeker's advantage to the maximum potential. Throughout this whole peek right here, you have a huge advantage over the enemy that is holding an angle like that. Your body is getting out from this corner at an extremely fast speed, and it's not going to be rendered in real time for the enemy. And when you're peeking enemies like this, there is no pussing out, no second chances. You always want to commit to that gunfight, or else you might die while trying to go behind a corner because of angle perception advantage, and also because Valorant servers are. The fast swing and crouch peek can be performed even if you're not close to the wall, but they won't be that efficient, because angle perception advantage of the enemy is going to reduce our peeker's advantage. If you tune into any stream of some pro or Radiant player, you're going to see this type of a movement pattern a lot. First, they jump spot the angles, and then they perform a fast swing onto enemies from the closer wall with perfect crosshair placement. So essentially in Valorant, this is the most powerful way to engage enemies, but you need to have a good crosshair placement, or else that advantage will be completely lost by the time that you're trying to perform some kind of a stupid flick. Bonus movement tips! You can drop from any slightly elevated position without making a single footstep, as long as you go down exactly underneath that position. You and your friends can boost each other on any box in Valorant without using abilities. First player is consistently jumping jumping and moving towards the upper position, while second player is crouching and moving underneath him. Player that is on the opposite side of a smoke is always in some kind of an advantage. When you're moving through the smokes with the tip of your gun, enemies will see you significantly faster. You always want to move through smokes sideways with your shoulder and fast flicks to reduce this advantage. If you're moving through the smokes, make sure that you're entering and exiting smokes fast. And when you're shifting, you can use the silent step mechanic. All of this will reduce the advantage that enemies have inside or outside of the smoke. Stay away from jump peeking. It was very powerful at the beginning of Valorant, but right now it takes too much time to regain the accuracy of your weapon once you land on the ground. It can be useful if you're playing some kind of a one-tap gun like Operator to surprise enemies and throw their crosshair placement off, but majority of times you're just going to hurt yourself. With bunny hop, air strafing and crouch, you can also reach some positions without using any abilities. For an example, you can get on top of this box on split by simply running towards it, jumping, crouching, and releasing the crouch as soon as you hit the top of this box. There's a lot of these elevated positions that you can reach with this type of a mechanic, so just go and find it in a custom server. You can use Jet's glide to reach some elevated positions without using any abilities. All you need to do is run forward, jump, glide, crouch in the middle of a glide, and release crouch as you're about to hit the top of this elevated spot. Your tiny legs are going to push you on top of these positions. It's the same mechanic that we used on middle box of split. You can also boost yourself on elevated positions with Neon slide. Tell one of your teammates to stand below a certain position on which you want to boost, run forward, slide, and jump once you reach the head of your teammate. This is where practicing that air strafing mechanic can be very useful for you. Also, try to practice how to properly use ropes on different maps into your own advantage. If you quickly attach, detach, and jump from ropes, you can extend the length of your movement. And on ropes, you're very accurate to perform burst fires, so you can use them to fast peek enemies on some positions. A lot of Valorant players think that double satcheling is the #1 movement mechanic that you should learn with Raze, but actually, satchel Ferrari swing is far more important. Ferrari swing already gives you a huge peeker's advantage, but if you combine it with Raze satchel on the wall, like this, and you detonate the satchel at the right moment of time, you can basically perform the plus ultra Ferrari swing with gigantic peeker's advantage. Practice using this movement mechanic before you even learn double satcheling, because it's absolutely the best peek in the game. And we all know that you can propel yourself with Jet's updraft and dash in multiple different positions. When it comes to practicing all of these movement techniques, I recommend you to spend as much time as possible in custom servers and deathmatch on different maps. Remember that no matter which peeking technique you're using, before shooting at your enemies, you want to make sure that your crosshair placement is exactly on the enemy's head, and that your body is 100% stationary for perfect weapon accuracy. That is why dynamic crosshair can help you a lot with your movement and engaging enemies while practicing. When the crosshair is wide, your gun is not accurate. When the crosshair shrinks down, your gun is 100% ready to one-tap the opponents. I always say that the aim is only 20% of your gameplay in Valorant, and you should spend at least 50% more time training your movement, crosshair placement, developing game knowledge, and other skill sets. Perfect raw mechanical skill is meaningless if we don't polish other aspects of our gameplay. And that's why I'm helping players with my coaching and training programs on Discord, because having a good mentor to teach you all of these things is very important for your development of good habits and faster progress, instead of watching some mambo-jambo guides of 5 minutes that are farming views and teaching you how not to play Valorant. Also, that's why we're ending this video with another unexpected coaching giveaway. One person from the comments will get my exclusive coaching program that consists of 30+ hours of pre-recorded videos that I've never shared anywhere before. These videos will teach you everything that you need to know about Valorant in order to improve your gameplay faster and fix all of your problems, such as angle holding and positioning. Some of the players that purchased this coaching program even managed to go from bronzy to radiant, so there is hope for every one of you that watch Charlatan's content. Down in the comments, tell me why should I pick you as a winner for this coaching giveaway. And this covers absolutely everything when it comes to proper movement and engaging enemies enemies in Valorant. If you don't want to miss any important videos in the future, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn your notifications on, leave a like and comment. Share this video with your boosted or hard-stuck friends. Check out my twitch.tv/Charlatan channel for some live tips and solo queue shenanigans. And down in the description below you can find all of my other social media. I'm yours, one and only, Warden of the Tricksters community. Thank you for watching and cut, baby!